In this episode,
when we build strong bonds between women, it busts the shame and the isolation because women know it's not just them and it's not just her individual problem.
welcome to There's No Place Like Home, Paths to Healing. This series is about domestic abuse. Listen with care. CommBank acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands across Australia as the continuing custodians of country and culture. CommBank Next Chapter is proud to partner with FW to bring you this important series. Support is available for people within Australia experiencing financial abuse, even if you don't bank with us. For many, escaping from an abusive home is just the beginning, because there's surviving the immediate crisis and then there's recovery. Everything that comes next.
She said, where do I go to talk about the trauma that I'm living with?
It gives me the tingles every time I talk about it. This is young men.
Seeing them literally break out of the cycle in front of your eyes, you just know you're making a difference.
Many people abused by their partner are cut off from the world, from their loved ones, their community, and in some cases, their culture, core parts of who they are. So how can reconnecting with culture and community help someone to rebuild their place in the world and reconnect with their own identity outside of a perpetrator's influence and control? In this episode, I'm joined by Sono Leone Weatherall, the Butchala and Garawa woman who founded Strong Women Talking, an Aboriginal-led grassroots movement with an extraordinary success story. I'm also joined by Juliana Nkrumah, an award-winning human rights advocate who, through Settlement Services International, is transforming how multicultural victim survivors are supported in crisis and far beyond. And I'm joined by Annabelle Daniel, the woman behind Women's Community Shelters, a first-of-its-kind organisation working with suburbs and towns who want to build local domestic violence shelters. She's giving victim survivors a community supporting them, as well as a place to sleep. Welcome everyone to There's No Place Like Home, Paths to Healing. It is such an honour for me to be in a studio with the three of you. I'd like to start by asking everyone to share a little bit about themselves and what drives them to do the work that they do. Annabelle Daniel, you are the CEO of Women's Community Shelters. Tell me a little bit about what led you to your work.
I would have to say that it was about 15 years ago and I took over the management of Elsie Women's Refuge, which some people may have heard of. And I will never forget a day. We just had one woman leave with her 3 children the day before. She'd gone on to New Safe Housing and we'd waved goodbye to her. My amazing staff had got that one room ready. And I'd gone out to a meeting in the city and I came back at about 11 o'clock. And 3 of my staff members came running towards me and each one of them was holding a clipboard. And on that clipboard was the details of a woman and her children who desperately needed that one room that we had available. And one was the local police station. They had a 22-year-old Aboriginal mum with 3 kids and she'd been very badly physically assaulted and he was desperate to find somewhere for her to go with her kids. The second call was from the social worker at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, and they had a mum who had premature twin babies, and they said, there's domestic violence in the home, we're going to have to remove the children from her if she can't find somewhere safe to go. And the third call was from a mum who'd slept in her car over the weekend in Wollongong, south of Sydney, 2 teenage kids. And she said, I've got $30 left in the world and I will put that money into petrol in my car if I can drive up and have that room. And so that was the 3 stories in front of me that I had to make a choice of who was going to get that room. And I thought, this is 2011 Australia. How is there not a safe room available for every single one of them? And that was my moment when I went, I'm going to do everything I can to create new safe beds for women and children in Australia. So that was really where it all started for me.
Thank you for that, Annabelle. And it's so distressing to know that all 3 of you would have a similar situation where you had to decide who you could help and who you had capacity to support. Juliana Nkrumah, You are the head of Gender Equity for Settlement Services International. You've also been awarded a Human Rights Medal for your work with refugee and migrant women. Your list of achievements is very long and I can't fit it into this podcast. Could you share a little bit about what led you to do the work that you do and what drives you?
I think what led me to do the work I do is learning to bring the voices of women and vulnerable women who are normally not in the public sphere. We don't see them, they are almost invisible, and yet they have their own voice. Not only bringing their voice, but also finding the space to center those voices in the important decisions that affects them. Because we quite often say we will empower, we will do for, but we don't consult the women in order to find out what would be right for you, what would be good for you. We just give or we just speak for when women actually know exactly what would be right for them. And it's no wonder that women return to difficult situations because we don't often ask them and therefore we don't give them the right solutions. With refugee and migrant women, what we do in SSI and what we've done since I've been in SSI for the last 7 years is seek to bring the issues of CALD, if you like, culturally and linguistically diverse women, migrant and refugee women's issues into the mainstream debate and mainstream discourse around domestic and family violence. Because when we started, we went from nothing. I remember we had a pen and a piece of paper, and we started logging what is existing in New South Wales, what do CALD women have, what are their voices? And we really hammered on DV New South Wales to say, we need a CALD voice in there. We need a CALD voice in there. It almost became like a mantra. Wherever we went, we were like, well, what about CALD? What about CALD? It got annoying, but we kept pushing, It's like a ferret holding on to you and going, And eventually, we got the center, and the center is doing great for calm women. Thank you.
Sono Leone Weatherall, you are the founder of Strong Women Talking, which is an incredible First Nations-led group in Queensland. Could you tell me a little bit about what led you to found it?
Sure. Being a First Nations woman and having a lived experience myself, so seeing it growing up, witnessing it firsthand, and then as I got older, being a victim and eventually a survivor, and now I consider myself a thriver. So being able to break out of the cycle, and I could only do that with finding out really what it was. Living in community, you see it a lot, but you don't really you can't articulate what you're seeing. So for myself, it was a call to DV Connect, throwing 3 big black garbage bags into the boot of the car and saying to the kids, let's go, we're going on a holiday. And I'm finding myself in a women's refuge overnight. In that process, it's so daunting and fearful, and obviously with the trauma that you experience, and then it doesn't just disappear overnight once you've left, and that trauma sort of stays with you. So being able to heal from that. So for me, it was my personal experience of seeing that I needed to actually find out and educate myself so I wasn't going back into that same cycle. So then once I did that, and I went on my healing journey, just really identifying the need in community. So seeing that there was a big gap once women leave and after they're in crisis, and then how are they able to heal from the trauma, from that violent relationship, and then build themselves up, with the right tools to be able to empower yourself to live out the dreams for your future.
Thank you so much, Sono. I think that captures what we're discussing really beautifully, in the sense that this series is about
healing and recovery in the long term. And as you say, you don't leave a crisis shelter and then get on with the work of rebuilding your life. You bring what was done to you along with you, and supports are needed. And victim survivors have a right to the self-determination to survive and then thrive. We've spoken about how sometimes mainstream services don't offer everything that an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander woman might want on her own healing journey, and the ways that Strong Women Talking supports and complements that. Could you share your thoughts on what you offer and how it complements existing supports?
So I think for us, having an Aboriginal cultural framework is something that's really empowering, and we have that support that upholds our whole organisation as well as our values. That is really pivotal to have a successful relationship with First Nations women when they come in. So we have elders in residence, aunties in residence, and that's a part of the cultural framework of kinship connection. So maintaining that connection, a lot of women feel isolated or are isolated deliberately as a form of abuse. So re-establishing that kinship connection with a mother figure and a trusted mother figure, or a lot of women haven't experienced that because of whatever the situation or the family dynamic. But yeah, I think it's really important to have, when you go into an Aboriginal organisation, you're seeing women that look like you, they sound like you. One of the comments we get a lot in the last 12 months since setting up, or 18 months since getting our funding, and is, wow, when I rang your organisation, the young girl just sounded so like a niece and it was so helpful. Or, oh, I just love the sister that picked up the phone. It just sounded like ringing home. So it's just that familiarity of and that cultural integrity and safety for women.
Juliana, does that resonate with you as well?
I'm reflecting on that and smiling to myself because of the amazing diversity that we have among cult communities. And we don't have a system that puts, if you like, African people or Middle Eastern people or in some of the refugees. In our service, we look at the whole diversity of people. So what we use to make up for the auntie and the cousins and the sisters is language. Yeah. So we will try and we will make sure that the person is in touch with an interpreter, so that that person then will be able to work with the service provider in language. But we go beyond language interpretation in our service to cultural interpretation. So the person who comes to work with the service provider, who is a mainstream service provider, is someone who can help the mainstream service provider understand the cultural nuances that the person is carrying with them. One of the things that really impacted on us to push for that capacity building of the mainstream service was stuff that we do in training. So we engage in multicultural training on DV. And sometimes I attend the training as a facilitator. And one day I was sitting in the training and a question was posed to the trainees. And the teacher said, oh, what would you take in your safety box if you were to escape DV? And the person is from an Indian subcontinent country. So she said, I'll take my jewelry. And the facilitator was like, why would you take your jewelry? And I tapped her on the thighs and I said, hang on a minute. This woman said she would take her jewelry. Let her really open up to explain to you the need for her jewelry. She's carried her jewelry as part of her dowry. And so that is what she will fall on if she's in financial difficulty. So that jewelry is very important. When she leaves the situation, she knows she's got that jewelry. She can go and sell it. She'll get the money, and that will be her financial base for going forward. So we bring those cultural nuances, cultural understanding, cultural responsiveness to the environment in which that woman is being supported to heal and to go forward.
I'd like to know from you, Juliana, what role you think community has to play in someone's long-term healing and recovery, especially as it's been noted, often there is an isolation from the people in your life and your community and potentially your culture. What role does community have to play?
I've been reflecting on that question a lot because I know that community is sometimes not the go-to area for a person who is a victim. In fact, there are circumstances where community isolates the victim because they don't believe, or they believe that the victim is exposing the community or exposing the family. My reflection was, how are we going to make sure the community actually understands that a victim is a victim and not run to protect the perpetrator? Because the community will almost protect the perpetrator because they think that by doing what you're doing, by reporting to police, you are shining a spotlight on the community, and that's not something you do. So in order to do that, we need to support the women in the community to understand the role of DV and how it impacts everybody, including those that you are trying to protect, so that they put themselves in a space where they are able to be the go-to place for that one woman who is struggling and to support in their healing. One of the things we did in the 7 years or 6 years in which we were setting up the Adira Center was to develop a project called Supporting You. So we got women in the community. The women who are magnets in the community, they know everything about everybody. Yeah. And so, but they don't have training in DV. They don't understand the red flags. They don't know the referral point. So we got them accredited training in DV so that they were told to be able to say to that young woman, oh, we've heard that story. Do you know that you're actually going through DV and that there is help for you? That older woman will say, it's okay. I'm not going to do anything for you, so don't worry about it, but I will refer you to somebody. So those supporting you women are comfortable in making the referral because they know there's nothing on your noses. And that person can come back to them and say, Auntie, thank you very much for referring me. I'm feeling better now. I'm feeling okay now. And to know that somebody is there to support them along that journey.
It's breaking the shame and stigma, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah, it's really, really important.
Yeah.
Annabelle, listening to you, Juliana, I was reflecting on the work you do at women's community shelters and the fact that your organisation uniquely requires community buy-in. It requires a community to want a shelter to be there. Can you tell me a little bit about that model and the impact of that on someone who is seeking shelter?
For me, it gets to the heart of everything that is good, and just accesses this enormous pool of good people that are out there in community that want to do something to address this issue. Because, for the last 50 years, we've kind of dealt with domestic violence in secrecy, behind closed doors. If you had a refuge in your suburb, you probably wouldn't know that it was there. If you wanted to help, you wouldn't know who to find. And I think there's been an incredible amount of work done in Australia over the last 10 years by extraordinary victim survivors and advocates who have just busted so much shame in the public sphere about talking about domestic violence. And so our model really works to identify local champions in communities in New South Wales to begin with, but this is a model that could go Australia-wide because community is everywhere, right? And it walks alongside local champions who've identified a need for more crisis accommodation in their community and says, we will provide you everything that you need in terms of policies and procedures and templates and job descriptions and agendas and computer systems to actually run a shelter on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, it's like so many people want to do good, but they're like, well, where would I even start if I wanted to do this? You know, like I've got a blank page. And then once we've established that shelter entity, we've found the place to operate, employed the staff, we join everybody together in a bigger family. The more I work with in place-based ways around this kind of work, the more of an advocate I become, because I have just had such an extraordinary opportunity over the last 12 and a half years to see the good in people and to see when you take a big, scary national issue that feels too much for anybody to handle and you take it down to this local level and you say, this is how your club can make a difference, or this is how your business or your school or your preschool can make a difference, people go, oh, okay, I can be part of that solution. So it's just a really powerful way of working. And I firmly believe that it is that community inclusion and acceptance that is a vital part of healing. It is the safe housing, the professional support, but meaningful social and community inclusion is vital to healing and recovery.
What's the flow-on effect? Because what you've all shared to me speaks to the fact that community awareness and community support for healing has a flow-on effect for the community and for prevention as well.
What we very quickly found was that when you work in ways like this, you're actually taking a whole community on a journey of understanding what domestic and family violence is. A lot of people don't learn when you just talk at them and tell them stuff. They actually learn when you say, here's a job to do, you know, go put some cabinets together, and then they might be like, oh, okay, well, who's going to be here? How long are they going to stay? What are you going to do with them while they're here? Like, you can educate people in a range of ways about domestic violence. And we find that particularly working with men in local communities is practical action is like Rotary clubs are just amazing for getting things done. Like, you give those guys a task, they're in there. And that sort of stepping up to practical action is a call that we could make Australia-wide.
What is the impact and what have you seen from women who stay in your shelters of knowing that there is a community that actively wants her there?
That is the thing that is so powerful in recovery. When I think about one of the programs that we have is a program called Walk the Talk, which is our local shelter high schools. In term 1, this is year 9 or year 10, we do respect for relationships, gender equality and domestic violence education session. And then we ask the kids who are involved to actually adopt their local shelter for a year and do something practical. I remember we had one boys' school that was out in the hills, Oak Hill College. And after having that session, the boys said, right, we're going to fundraise. They went and fundraised. They went out and bought welcome packs, then put tea and chocolates and all things together. And they put a little note in those welcome packs for the women and children coming into the shelter saying, this is from the boys at Oak Hill College. We want you to feel safe here and we've got you back.
Oh,
that's incredible.
And that's still, it still makes me emotional. It gives me the tingles every time I talk about it because, you know, this is young men. You know, this is the change that we actually want to see. And when the women and children know that community says, we want you to feel safe and feel cared about, those are the examples. And it's also in the love and care that comes from the butcher from the local shops who sends a meat tray down once a week so they can have a barbecue. It comes from the bakery at the shopping centre that says, have our unsold goods at the end of the day so you can have something nice. All of those things are just such a vital part of community healing.
Practical action makes me think of the work you do, Sono. You shared that women who've participated in Strong Women Talking programs often return. Can you tell me a little bit about the cycle you've noticed there?
So we've had, we've had really successful stories of women coming back, and we have now had 2 cohorts last year graduate trained healing journey facilitators. And some of those women are now actually delivering and delivered quite a few healing journeys in community.
And joining you and joining that work has also had benefits for them economically in rebuilding their lives. Is that right? What have you seen there?
Yeah, we definitely have. So when we think about intergenerational trauma, you can look at intergenerational poverty. So we see that impacting our communities. For my grandmother, she was under the Aborigines Protection Act that gave the government of the day the right to she actually never got a wage all her life, and it was put in a trust fund and held by the government. And so we see that the impact flow down on the generations. That was only my grandmother, and also my mum also was under the Aborigines Protection Act and grew up on an Aboriginal reserve, Cherbourg in Queensland, and where a lot of our old people were put, a lot of our ancestors were put. And so it's generation across a generation of racist structures and racist policies and legislation that have directly impacted financial wealth and financial literacy and for future generations. So being able to employ a First Nations woman that's been impacted by domestic and family violence and see amazing outcomes like, women that have not even considered ever owning a brand new car be able to own a brand new car. We've been doing mortgage brokering workshops for women or just stuff around financial literacy for our staff. So seeing them, literally break out of the cycle in front of your eyes, it's really like touching, and you just know you're making a difference.
And it's a credit to you as well and the work that you do. Could you tell me a little bit about the sisterhood model at Strong Women Talking?
We are a sisterhood of elders, aunties and sisters that are passionate about driving change and really passionate about normalising, just like the name says, strong women talking. So, it's not shame to talk about the hard things. It's actually we want to normalise it. So we create this amazing environment of cultural safety where, if that looks like a woman coming in and she's greeted by an elder maybe or a sister, she's given a hug, she's offered a cup of tea, all those, that shame and stigma of I'm coming here for domestic violence, it's just gone because it's just the way we live and do things, our cultural practice. So, yeah, it's a real grassroots movement of women and aunties and community.
Juliana, to you, what does healing and recovery in a culturally safe way look like? Is there anyone that you think of when you think about the work you've done and the difference you've made?
That question makes me wonder which of the work that I've done.
Too much work, too many good things.
I want to reflect on this recent DV forum. When I say we had a DV forum in my community, it's a breakthrough event because our people don't talk about DV. I remember about 20 years ago, a woman came to our association meeting to talk about DV. And the oldest existing woman in our community, she's passed on now, she got up and she made the woman feel like she was doing the wrong thing, even daring to come to our community, talk about DV. And that was the last time we attended. So this forum was amazing. But a young woman who I know, and I know her story because I had gone with my husband into her home to gather with her husband and her husband's parents and her parents to talk about her situation. And I know now that her mom had to rescue her. And that woman put up her hand and asked the question. And she said, where do I go to talk about the trauma that I'm living with, even though I've left that relationship? That night, it hit me. And I thought, yes, of course, we have the trauma center in Wollongong and all that. But if I sent her there, what exactly is she going to get? So the point I'm making for us is there is a gap, and I'm admitting it. There is a gap. There is need for the institutions that have been established to break it. Annabelle, you talked about bringing it to the local level, to almost bring that amazing idea and the funding that has gone with it and disseminating it to the local level, where these young women who have had difficult situations, they've been rescued. But to hear that young woman articulate that, I thought, oh my God, just sending her to that center is not going to make it. Do it for her. We need to do more. So localizing these issues and localizing them not to the physical local level only, but also to the community, the local community level, as in the refugee community, the specific refugee community. You know, we for example, in Australia, we talk about Africa. It's like a country. My God. Yeah. So which language are we going to talk about? Yeah. Sorry, I've got to laugh about this one. So are we going to go to the Swahili speaking community? That's great, because it will take in most of East Africa. Maybe when you come to West Africa, let's do pidgin. Let's talk pidgin. Then everybody will gather around it. Yeah? At least that will help us, because everybody knows pidgin in West Africa. What are we going to speak in South Africa? Zulu? Maybe. And then what about Northern Africa? We really need to nuance our service provision in a way that will be relevant to that group. However, what it is what we've got. The conversations need to be had to support a woman like this young woman. What
is needed at that point where you say, as you note, a woman might be living her life seemingly. She has a job. She is looking after her children. She might have a place to stay, but that trauma of what was done to her is still living. What do you see as the supports that need to be happening there? Is it that community conversation?
That community conversation was a good icebreaker for her and a good leeway for her to go, this affirms my situation. I haven't done anything. She's probably living with the idea that what she did was wrong, yeah? And if affirm said that leaving was not wrong, that's number one. And then to help the community. So as we have the conversations, it helps the community also to gain strength and to gain knowledge and understanding to support that woman and not isolate her, and then to help the community to gain wisdom and also understanding of where the safe places are and where the support projects are.
You advocate for moving from a cultural lens to a human rights lens. What does that look like?
Quite often we use culture as an excuse to cover up wrongdoing, or it's part of our culture. And quite often people also look at cultural groups and think that certain cultural groups are violent. No culture is violent, but certain cultural practices are upheld under the banner of cultural rights. That can be very dangerous and quite often gendered. So women become victims of cultural practices that are inimical to their health and their well-being in the name of our culture. And nobody should touch it. Nobody should touch it because you don't understand. This is our culture. That's the cultural relativism debate. What human rights is saying is, so long as it inhibits freedom and it also brings trauma and torture to the individual in any way, that is not acceptable. So what is important now for us is to begin to look at all these practices through the lens of human rights and allow human rights to be the point at which we turn its culture on its head and prevent harm and trauma to women and girls.
I just always want to say too, and leaning into what Sono was saying before as well, I think one of the things that we need to remember in the response to domestic and family violence and where it came from, and certainly in Australia where it came from, was from this great wave of kind of feminist movement in the 1970s, you know, that there was sort of domestic violence refuges and rape crisis emerged out of that, and there was a lot of work. And of course, Aboriginal women had been doing this work and supporting one another for a very long time before that. But I think part of that really early or the 1970s work, in any case, was a lot of the work was about consciousness raising as well, and that these are universal experiences for women, no matter what your culture, no matter what your background. Domestic and family violence exists, and that part of our response to that is about breaking down the isolation and the trauma and building also strong peer support networks between women and being intersectional in our feminism to recognise how sexism and racism and misogyny all intersect. And when we build strong bonds between women, that response also builds, like, it busts the shame and the isolation and the trauma, because women know it's not just them and it's not just her individual problem.
Annabelle, Sono and Juliana, it's been a privilege speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining There's No Place Like Home, Paths to Healing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next time on Paths to Healing.
My life is very different to the life I had prior. Yes, it's free of physical abuse, but I'm navigating not having a job.
CommBank Next Chapter is proud to partner with FW to bring you this important series. Support is available for people within Australia experiencing financial abuse, even if you don't bank with us. Contact CommBank's Next Chapter team on 1800 222 387, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Sydney, Melbourne time, excluding public holidays, or visit commbank.com.au/next chapter. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate and follow or join the movement at futurewomen.com. This episode was hosted by Sally Spicer. Executive producer is Sally Spicer. Our producers are Odessa Blaine and Marcella Rossiano Barrow, who's also our video producer. Geraldine Bilston is our sensitivity consultant, and our supervising producer is Jamila Rizvi. Audio editing by Dave Collins, artwork by Patty Andrews, videography by Charlie Rogers.